Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sharon Milgram, and I am speaking with you today from the National Institutes of Health Office of Intramural Training and Education. And I'm joined here today with several good colleagues from the wellness team in the OITE. I want to thank all of you for joining me today to talk about this really important topic, how we can more fully support our biomedical trainees as we and they navigate these complicated times. We want to support them now and in their transition back to work and eventually into the career path that they choose. I'm joined here, as I said, with several OITE staff and consultants. Some work full-time at NIH and others work as wellness advisors and consultants part-time. I want to give you a sense of who you're talking with, and so I'm going to ask each of them to just briefly introduce themselves now. So we'll start with Michael.
Hello, my name is Michael Sheridan, and I do diversity training and wellness programming with the OITE. In the wellness part, that means meeting with trainees, providing workshops, running groups, and we've been very busy lately. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Julia?
Hey everybody, I'm Julia Jarvis, and I've been with OITE the last 5.5 years, working with trainees and leading meditation, and it's great to be here with all of you.
Great, thank you. John?
Hello, yes, I'm John Taborn, and I'm one of the career counseling team members as well as pre-med advising team members. I've worked with trainees that are postbacks, postdocs, visiting scholars since 2016.
Great, thanks, John. Annie?
Hi, I'm Annie Shiner. I'm a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist and a wellness advisor at OITE. Been working there about going on maybe 4.5, 5 years. I do groups with trainees and consultations. Also, I've been working with tenure track PIs in a coaching program.
Thank you. Emily?
Yes, hello, my name is Emily Gomar. I'm a licensed graduate marriage family therapist, and I've just started doing groups with international trainees. Myself, I just arrived in the States about 5 years ago, having done my PhD in France, and PhD in France, I think I said that. And then I married a Dutchman and lived in Holland as an international there too.
Great, thank you. Laurie?
Hi, I'm Laurie Mcnulty. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been working with NIH as a wellness advisor for a couple of years now, doing presentations and working with trainee groups and staff. And I'm also in a private practice as well.
Thank you. Sabra?
Hi, greetings. I'm Sabra Starnes. I'm a clinical social worker. I'm in private practice here in the Maryland area, and I've been a wellness facilitator since November of 2019, providing different workshops and groups.
Great. Thank you all for introducing yourself. So our goal today is to have a discussion based on questions that were submitted earlier this week from university and NIH colleagues. And some of the questions come from NIH PIs and university faculty. The majority come from graduate student and postdoc office program directors and administrators. Some questions that were submitted earlier were on grant policy and NIH policies pertaining to training programs and funding. And let me just save you the frustration if that's why you logged in and tell you I won't be discussing those questions. I work on the intramural side of the house and don't set extramural grant policy. So if you're here to hear a discussion about NIH grant policy, you can go ahead and log out now or decide to stay just to hear an interesting discussion about student wellness. Because clearly if you're interested in grant policy, you're worried about your students as well. So I want to start the discussion today by noting how many faculty and program directors have shared, not only in the survey, but in some of the workshops that I've done in the last few weeks, how much they're pulled between this desire to put aside their own needs so that they can take care of their students and their trainees and run programs and be available. And they were pulled in one direction that way, but then they realized that they really need to take care of themselves and their families. One went so far as to say, beyond feeling pulled in multiple directions, I also feel pretty pessimistic myself. And yet I feel this need to put that pessimism aside to be optimistic for our students. So I thought that it might be a good idea to acknowledge that that's really the same for all of us and for all of you here on the panel today. And I thought maybe you could start by sharing just a little bit about what you do to take care of yourselves so that you can be available for your students and the other people that you work with. And then rather than just focus on what you do yourself, try a little bit to make it more generalizable for those of us who may not be in the wellness and mental health communities. Go ahead, Julia, thanks.
Well, again, it's great to be here, and I'm glad people are listening in. And I know for myself, if I'm not taking care of myself, I can't take care of anybody. And if I'm trying to, I'm not doing it well. So the ways that I take care of myself is regular exercise every day, trying to eat well and drink as much water as I can. I have a regular sitting practice that I don't let slip. I do it every day. And I don't believe everyone has to do a sitting meditation. There's lots of different ways to come back to the present moment, because that's where we're really living anyway. And I also watch my thoughts and kind of aware of when negativity gets in or fear gets in, just jotting those down and saying, is this really true? Is this how I want to live my life today? So those are a few things that I do to take care of myself.
Anyone else want to add to that? Annie, and then Michael.
I am living right now in a group of people, and one of the things that we've done is set limits on what we talk about and when we talk about it, so that dinner time is not all conversation about the virus, about politics, about things like that. So providing social time and connection time with other people that is just enjoyable time has been an important part of it. Also, I find developing or giving time for hobbies and interests that are not about the virus, that are about life and daily life.
Great. Thank you. Michael?
In addition to what Julia and Annie have said, a couple of real lifelines for me is that my meditation teacher in California has been offering a free Sangha twice a week, and I'm religious about attending it because it fills me back up after giving out all day, as well as attending virtual services at my church. They've both been really helpful for me.
Thank you. Sabra, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, just to add to that, making sure I'm staying connected to friends and family by phone, using the FaceTime, Skype, and just different ways so not to feel isolated, and to also help keep down the anxiety of worry for family and friends that I can't see face to face. And then also I'm doing a lot of powering down. I think a lot of us are on the internet and the phone and the computers, and I'm making sure that I set a time that I turn off all devices and just spend time doing nothing, reading, just spending some time, just kind of some downtime.
Thank you. Laurie, you want to add anything? It's been nice to hear so many different things that we all can use. Go ahead, Laurie.
Yeah, I do a sensory switch. So I used to be able to get in my car and drive home and sort of sensory change my environment, but now I try and do a sensory switch. So if it's changing my clothes or cooking or taking a shower or doing a fake commute, walk around the block, I like to physically switch myself from work to back to home, because I don't have that opportunity anymore to drive and power down that way.
I want to thank you. You mentioned that on one of the workshops, and now I've started commuting to and from work, and I totally love it. Even in the rain, I'll go out onto the porch and at least sort of virtually feel a sense of leaving work. John?
Yeah, so thank you very much. I was thinking about and listening to what you were saying. A couple of things that I've done is, what helps for me is I try to look at if there's any opportunities to do something new or different than what I've done before. Because otherwise it kind of keeps me involved with the sensory switch in my mind, and I've been working with some trainees on this as well, is how to work at home. And what helps me is to actually have a set up space in my here for where I'm working, and actually come in and come out at the end of the day. Meaning I walk out the door, and then in the morning, sometimes I do walk around the block or something with my mask on. Everything keeps you safe, and then come back in and start work. I turn off the TV, I get dressed, and then when the end of the day, I close everything down and do the same thing. So it's like I'm entering and coming back from work. And those are some things that help me keep things separate, as well as even before looking at the opportunities to do more healthful things. Like I've been doing some, watching some videos, exercise videos, some yoga kind of videos that I haven't done before, but I've got time now to do a little bit of that. And it's been working. It's been really helping me keeping in touch with family and friends.
Emily, I'd like to hear from everybody on this one. So if you could wrap us up, thanks.
Sure. So going along with a sensory switch and going into your office as the workplace with the boundaries very clear between when I'm working and when I'm actually resting. My tendency sometimes is just to keep working. So now I really have found it very important to have a very clear time for myself when I begin and when I stop. And so that helps me sort of contain, when I'm working and when I get to relax.
I think it's hard for scientists to have this sense of turning it off because we're so used to working long hours. And in fact, I will come back to that a little bit later as we move through the questions. I would like maybe for a moment, because several of you talked about elements of meditation or mindfulness. Julia said, I sit every day, and I realized that as somebody who doesn't meditate, I'm not actually even that familiar with. If I wanted to begin a meditation practice, is there a way that I could do that easily right now? So does anybody have any quick resource that they could throw out there for those of us who might explore meditation? And I can tell Michael does. Thanks, Michael.
Just a couple of really easy tips to get started. One is to realize that meditation isn't about trying to make your mind blank. If your mind were blank, we would want to call 911. And I think that people get confused by that and think they're not doing it right. And secondly, little and often is way better than long and infrequent. So that to start a practice, I tell trainees, even if you just begin the day with 6 deep breaths, 6 mindful, focus deep breaths, that's a good way to even get started. And then you can end your day that way too. And there are great apps and other things out there to get started. One of mine that's a favorite, and I know Julia loves it too, is Insight Timer. It has over 40,000 guided meditations on it, and it's free.
Great, thank you. So in many of the talks that I've been giving to trainees and to staff, I note that the coronavirus pandemic is difficult for all of us, but more difficult for some of us and difficult for each of us in different ways. So when we think about our trainees, some are very far away from their loved ones and support systems. Some are dealing with coronavirus-related illness or conditions that make them at much higher risk. Some are dealing with previous mental health conditions that are exacerbated from this. Some are dealing with food and housing insecurity that's made worse by their inability now to get out and supplement their income. And so I think that one of the things hard for us as mentors and supervisors is keeping so many different variables for students in mind. And we sort of want a one-way approach for dealing with this, but I suspect what we need to learn is that there are nuanced ways of handling the situation with each trainee. So I want to start and talk just in general about scientists first, and then pivot and talk about some of these different unique situations. So all of you have worked with scientists, and I know many of the therapists have worked with scientists also in their private practice, and particularly at times many NIH clients. I just wonder if you could start by thinking about your work with scientists, what you see as some of the strengths in the scientific community that might help us and our trainees navigate this situation.
I think one of the biggest strengths is problem solving, that being able to sort of look at this as something we have to figure out how to deal with, and what are, the actual variables as opposed to what the assumed variables are, kind of sorting out reality from all of the things that anxiety kind of tells us is going on to bring it back to facts. And I think using that can be very, very helpful in addressing one's own course, making decisions about a lab or a program, and in supporting trainees.
Great. Thank you. Anybody have anything they want to add to that? Laurie, go ahead.
I think Annie and I talk about this a lot, but the curiosity that comes from science, and oftentimes curiosity and worry, they have trouble coexisting, right? So if we're curious, we often don't feel as worried because we're thinking things through. So the curiosity that comes from somebody who is in that science field and that drive and that desire to sort of think about and find answers, it probably goes hand in hand with the problem solving.
Thank you. Anybody else have? John? Go ahead, John.
Yes, sure. I was thinking about, and a lot of times in career counseling with graduate and postdocs and professional students, we talk about transferable skills. And one of the, a couple of things, one of the skills that when I'm working with scientists is, it's actually a question that comes up quite a bit even in interviews, is tell me about a time when you've dealt with a setback or something hasn't worked so well in your research, and how did you handle that? And the answer is more in how did you handle that? And it's almost like you kind of, by the process, you kind of learned a little bit about, well, you don't have to stop everything. It might be, we stop this part of what I'm doing and we move forward and develop a different part of myself professionally. Or so if it's developing a grant writing skill or developing a writing skill or doing something else, it means your whole career slows down, but you can still continue to develop. So thinking about those transferable skills that might be useful during this time might be something that many PhDs and especially scientists will have to do.
Yeah, and that resonates for us, right? We know what it means. Somebody else wanted to say something? I'm sorry, I cut you off. Who was that? Or maybe I just got some feedback. Oh, Julia, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what I've loved working at NIH is with scientists, you give them data and they go, oh, it works. And then they do it. So there's so much science now about all the wellness tools we're talking about. And I find that trainees and postdocs and research fellows actually practice this because they can see that it is working.
That there's data to support it. So let's think about the blind spots. So as a community, what are the blind spots that many scientists have, and how might we deal with them as they impact us now, and how might we help our trainees deal with them? So what are some of the blind spots you all see? Michael?
So one of the strengths, which we've already talked about, which is the intellect and the problem solving and the curiosity, is a privileging of the mental faculties over either the bodily needs or the emotions. And so there sometimes can be a tendency to either not recognize or to dismiss anything that's going on with the physical body or the emotions that can get in the way of people doing what they need to do to take better care of themselves.
Thank you. Anybody want to add to that? And so then go ahead, Emily, thanks.
Also, there's a lot of passion in the scientists that we have the privilege of working with. And sometimes that also goes with a focus on performance and being effective and being productive. And especially in these times, it can turn into something they can be very hard on themselves, very critical, very self-critical.
Yeah. So maybe we can pull together that idea of transferable skills, and as people sort of strive to be productive, and that leads to real a critical take on things, remind them that they're developing some transferable skills in developing patience, in adaptability, flexibility, which are things that employers look for, right? And that's how we succeed in our work. Great, thank you.
I just want to add to that, Sharon. I think also the feeling that they are responsible for changing what's happened. And I think the ability to realize what's in their control and what's not in their control, that right now there's a lot of things that they are not able to control, and not letting that be a reflection on them, but that it's a pandemic that we're all in. And so helping them to kind of normalize it instead of making it kind of center on themselves in a critical way, falling back.
Thank you. Anybody want to add anything to wrap up that? Go ahead, Amy.
You know, I think all the things that people have said, but sort of realizing that what may be helpful to you may not be helpful to your trainee. And so recognizing that they may have a different experience or a different set of needs. So maybe diving into your work more might be helpful to you, but the trainee might not be able to do that. And so just piling more work onto them might make it worse. So just recognizing different people are having different experiences.
Yeah, I think that I was in a meeting where we were talking about wellness across the entire NIH, and somebody said, why are there so many options here? Why can't we just pick the best wellness tool and we'll give it to everyone? And we spent a long time wrapping our head around the fact that the experience was different and the needs were different and people's responses were different. I want to take some questions or address some questions that were submitted about specific situations and groups of trainees, going back to that idea that this is really a different experience for each person. So the first focus is on where students are putting their time and energy during the self-quarantine. And the question came from a career development professional who noted that at their institution, like many, all of the different seminars and workshops have transitioned to online, and students can sign up for individual career counseling appointments. There's all these resources that have been presented to them, and I certainly would echo that sentiment as I look at what we're offering from NIH. But they noted that in general, trainees are not showing up. And sometimes when they show up, they're not sharing their video or audio, so they're sort of showing up as silent participants. And it's hard to know, are they getting something out of this? Do they need something from me? I'm not giving them, what's the situation? And so they were wondering if you had any thoughts about ways to make it more comfortable for trainees to participate, whether we're missing something in providing offerings right now, whether we should be giving people more time to relax. So Laurie, I'll let you start since you put your hand up first.
So I have been speaking with a lot of trainees about this idea of imposter fears as a thing that gets in the way. So to share and say, I'm struggling, or I need a little bit more help, and to really be active participants, it takes a lot of vulnerability. And with that vulnerability, the fear is they're going to find me out, or I need to be able to solve this on my own. So the reaching out and connecting is they want to be there, they log in, but the vulnerability of showing their face and participating and jumping in is scary because of these imposter fears that a lot of them share. And when you start talking about that directly, I think oftentimes either in the chat or just through audio, people say, yeah, that's the thing that gets in my way. So maybe some of that is just addressing directly those imposter fears and the barriers of what it takes to be vulnerable and to share. And at the end, they usually write in the chat, thanks so much, that was helpful. So giving them maybe a few options of, you can put it in the chat if you're more comfortable, or you can use a background if you're more comfortable.
Thank you. Is there anyone, before we move on, so at the start of a program, are there some helpful things that we might all remember to mention? how we're doing, or we're all in this together? Or, I mean, do you imagine that there's something that the program directors could offer at the start, either beforehand to get people to actually sign in, or once people sign in to get more engagement? John?
I do have a couple of thoughts on this, and it's kind of related to your question, Sharon. It's from my work here, where and other people might have similar feelings, that our workshops, people do tend to attend quite a bit of some of the workshops we have. And I was thinking about from my work when I worked in college universities, I remember having a concern, would they attend? And one of the things that I think is helpful for training directors or even deans that might be on there, up front when you say, is there something we might say, is to endorse it and refer the students to them and say, this is why it's important. And I was thinking about something that that Sharon has done as part of that as the OITE training director, and the other training directors I hear have been doing this as well, is saying that, you know, part of this time we endorse, it's okay, we want you to, while you're at home, this is a way you can continue developing yourself, and referring them to these kinds of workshops, as well as doing research, reading papers, refer them there and endorse it and support that. I think that's really very helpful, because then they, in a sense, have kind of permission to go versus, and I think that's really helpful. And on top of that, I was gonna say something else, but, and then in terms of one of the things I am hearing that's very helpful from some of the trainees that I'm working with, is they're very, and this is the wording, they're very surprised and pleased to hear when a PI, a training director, a dean actually reaches out to them individually, or creates a space for them. Because sometimes they don't have an opportunity to even talk with the PI or the dean, but if there's an opportunity to meet and talk, like somebody was saying that the PI set up a meeting with me and said they'd be willing to meet weekly or a couple of times with me, and I really felt like they really heard me, and I really felt like I was important to them as part of the team. And then during that meeting, refer them to some of the workshops as you're hearing about it.
Thank you. Sabri, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I would just to follow up on that. One thing I think is helpful, something that I do and that we do in our groups when we're meeting in person, is before the group starts, really go over about privacy and confidentiality, and that what's going to be said in the group, the setting you share, it's not being recorded, it's not being written down, it's really just in this space. I think it can help for people to feel a little bit less anxious, less worried that maybe this is going to be shared somewhere else. And then also giving people also talking about your space, because most people are at home with other people. So kind of setting up, I let people know I wear my headphones, kind of finding a place that feels comfortable and safe, where maybe there's not others around to hear what's being said, so that you can have the freedom to kind of share what you need to. So just building up safety and privacy.
Thank you. Annie?
I think this goes with what everybody said also. I think particularly what Laurie was saying about imposter fears. I think people are feeling very unproductive, having difficulty motivating themselves, and feel like I can't talk to my PI or my program director because I haven't accomplished anything. And they're going to be upset with me or disappointed in me, and I feel ashamed about that. So acknowledging the difficulties of productivity, setting up regular meetings that are check-in meetings that aren't about accountability in some way, to loosen the channels, to open the channels up so that people feel more comfortable coming and talking to you without feeling like they're going to get in trouble, or they're going to be found out.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go through some questions about specific trainee populations. Some of our trainees were dealing with mental health challenges prior to the pandemic, and others are now facing situational depression or issues related to substance abuse as a result of so much dramatic change in their life in such a short period of time. So we have one question about the best way to support a trainee exhibiting signs of depression, especially if that person is new, far from home, far from family, and not very well known to me, right? So it's not a student I've been, working with for months where I feel comfortable. It's somebody that I am just recently met, but I'm concerned about. And if you have any thoughts about initiating a conversation around mental health and advice that you would give. Yeah, go ahead, Annie, thanks.
I think one of the challenges that program directors, PIs face is that there are things that are private and it's not your business, and HR kind of policies about not intruding in people's personal lives, and you're not supposed to know, you don't need to know, you can't ask about things. And so how do you take care of somebody or watch out for somebody that you don't know and you don't ask about that? So I think the first thing is to know what your institutional resources are. Who are the people who are set up to help with those things, and then talking to your trainees about, sort of how are you doing and do you need additional support, and you have some knowledge of them and some awareness of like what their productivity levels are, what their demeanor might be, how does it look different than what you're used to, but also asking them, letting them know we have all these supports, everybody is struggling right now, and these are things that are available. So that's one way to start, or one place to go.
Anyone have anything to add? Great. So what about some thoughts about international trainees? What do we need to keep in mind about this community, and are there additional supports that we should provide to this community, unique and sort of in addition to what we provide to the broader community? Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, so it's a very diverse population, of course, by definition. So it's hard to make generalizations. At the same time, it's a population, I think, that's very much at risk of isolation, much more than other people. They might be completely relying on the lab for their social, for getting out of, whatever, for getting out of their home, for social opportunities, and for work. So if that gets taken away, they have nothing. So isolation is a big one. And then also, I mean, the thing that was interesting in the group I did last week with the international trainees is that it seemed very important for them to be with other international trainees, to be able to talk about culture shock, how they're struggling in this particular context, what they miss about their context, and just have a place to sort of empathize with each other about this not quite fitting, and that was really important for them. And one of them even said this was the first time they felt like they belonged somewhere. So I think having these opportunities for these international trainees where they can just talk about the not quite belonging and their struggle, I think is very important.
Anybody have anything else to add? Michael, and then Annie.
I was just talking with an international trainee this morning, and she's not the only one who has raised the issue of the whole decision making about whether to try to go to the home country at this time, whether that's possible, and the sense of pain and loss and disconnection that creates when it's not possible. As well as another international trainee who is of Japanese heritage, talking about the particular stressors of the anti-Asian sentiment.
I'm going to ask that we hold on that because the next question goes quite about that. Thank you for bringing it up. I think it's a really important question. So I want to follow up. So I get it. I've heard a lot about trainees feeling isolated, disconnected from home, the added stress. It's not only of whether to go home or not, it's whether they can go home or not. It's also visas. Can I stay easily? So I heard a lot about understanding the added issues and burden and maybe pain and grief. So do we acknowledge that and move on because we really can't help? Or maybe we feel that we can't help. So beyond knowing what's going on, what are things that program directors can say and do to be supportive? And one thing Emily points out is having some safe spaces for people to gather. And I think that's the same for people of color, for LGBTQ students right now. I think we need to be supporting all of our affinity groups and student clubs to get on Zoom and have activities. But beyond giving a space, are there things we should be saying and doing to show solidarity, support, understanding? Julia?
Yeah, I was just, one of the students in the meditation the other day talked about it being a holiday where she's from, and just trying to understand what that holiday might mean to them and how they celebrated it. So just connecting with people on what's happening culturally in their home where they're not, and maybe helping them celebrate that, or just even listening to what it means to them, seems very important to people to be talking about.
So going back to that curiosity a little bit, but in this case, curiosity about life and experience. Thank you. John?
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts from like the career side that's related to this that I would just add. Some of the concerns from some of the international trainees that I have been working with and we've been working with, many of the trainees that we've been working with also have families that are currently here, meaning a partner, and also they may have children. And especially for those across the country that they may be graduating or they're coming towards the end of their postdoc experience, and they've clearly said this, there's a little concern about will I be unemployed here, and what it's like for finding jobs, and will I be employed in another country, and especially if it's a country I'm going to where I might not be a citizen of that yet, but my partner is. You know, there's some real concerns around that. And so what can be helpful is not only listening and hearing, but if there's any way that they can begin to understand that if they can have some kind of, I'm going to say it like this, month, 2 month, 3 months to stay, keep the job that they have in some way, where they don't have to worry about, I have to hurry up and uproot, but to keep some kind of stability through some of this in terms of financially, in terms of home, and also with the family things they're trying to decide, do I have to start my kids in school here or another country, and can we get there? And then family over there, they might, depending on the country they're going to, will they have employment opportunities? A lot of stuff coming up for international, but for the training directors and for postdocs, for postdoctoral and training directors, not only to listen, but see if there's anything they can do to help them, like professionalize and prepare in a sense for both. Like opportunities to talk with alumni that might be employed in the country where they're going to learn about what's going on over there from their departments or from their schools. Alumni can be very helpful. Preparing job search documents that we're working on, CVs here, CVs for a new country. Those kind of things like that are some practical things that might be helpful. I don't know.
Thank you, John. Anybody have any last? Go ahead, Annie, on the way to the next question.
So, sometimes I was talking to an international grad student who said they were governed by visa requirements and their internship, but also the laws of their home country, which limited what their options were. And so that was what was panicking them, but they had not talked about it to anybody. And so people were trying to reassure them about things that they knew about and missing the thing that they were really worried about. So it goes back to what you were saying, Sharon, about listening, because they may be affected by things that you have no idea about. And so even if you can't change them, at least a place to talk about it.
I wonder if each of us developed a list of questions so that it's sort of, we had to sort of a go-to list as we were interacting with people. Are there things I don't know about that it would be helpful for me to know about? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to come back to John's point about giving some flexibility, right? And can somebody stay in their position a little longer? I think one thing that students are looking for is for us to be advocating for that. Right? Maybe we don't set that, we don't make those decisions, but are we advocating for that? From the perspective of NIH, I just want to share that in my interview last week with Dr. Collins, he stressed that he saw trainees both at NIH and across the globe as the future of science, and that it was certainly NIH's hope to be as supportive and flexible as possible. And so I hope more and more will be coming out about that. I want to pivot back to the issue that Michael raised, which I think is on a lot of our minds, and that is our worry about trainees from China and other Asian countries as we read more and more about hate crimes as a response of the COVID-19 crisis. Beyond hate crimes and helping people cope and deal and feel safe within their life, there's also training directors, many of us have noted that we're worried about microaggressions and uncomfortable interactions just on our campus in a community that should treat every researcher and worker and staff member with respect. And so do you have thoughts about what we can do on our campus to minimize the microaggressions and unsupportive behavior? And I think, I'll start by saying I think perhaps we as a community need to start offering some bystander training now and having some discussions before we get back to campus. But I just wonder if you have thoughts about that. And then beyond, in making people feel safe as they navigate. Well, we can't make people feel safe, but what can we do to support trainees in finding safe ways to navigate the communities that they live in? Michael?
Well, first and foremost, I really hope that all of the programs across the country don't see diversity, sensitivity, inclusion, equity as separate from wellness. If we see that as an inherent component of self-care and wellness, and that these kinds of experiences that people have create incredible stress and have major impacts on mental and physical health. I think that's a good place to start, is to recenter diversity and equity and social justice issues as a health issue. Secondly, what I have experienced is the power of when I'm talking with someone who has been going through something like this. And I'd also like to raise at this time what's happening with African Americans, especially African American men, who are wearing masks and trying to do what they're supposed to, and being accused of somehow coming into a store to rob it. That's a whole other thing that we are seeing, as well as the anti-Asian backlash. So one thing we can do is just really hear those stories, validate them, let the person who's talking know that we hear them and that we are appalled by that, and that whatever feelings they're having are legitimate. And then to look for resources, either to help the person cope with it, or if it's within an institutional organizational context, a way to confront and address whatever the micro or macro aggression has been.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add something to that? Great. So I actually want to talk for a little bit more about concerns for diverse populations. So we're also worried about our students of color, because data are clearly showing that COVID-19 disproportionately impacts communities of color and people from marginalized communities. And I think it probably much of the answer in relation to Asian students would apply, but I just wonder if you have thoughts about how we best support trainees of color and those from financially disadvantaged backgrounds, because in all likelihood, as they transition back to work, they will potentially know more individuals impacted, feel more personally impacted by this. I mean, the data are really staggeringly overwhelming and looking worse day by day. People have thoughts about that. Sabra?
Yeah, I did a Trainees of Color group earlier this week, and one of the things that really came out is wanting to, it's just been mentioned, really to be heard instead of having someone say, I understand, or minimize it, just to really be able to have a person share a worry, a fear, and have it be understood, and also be recognized that it's not going to be tolerated within their space. But I also think knowing that they can have a group like the Trainees of Color group, or that when there are some issues or things that are coming up that they aren't sure how to respond to their PI or someone, that they can talk it out amongst other people that they can kind of feel connected and understand, and then being able to then figure out how to problem solve it and how to work through it.
Thank you. Anybody want to add anything to that? John?
Yeah, I'm going to add a comment. I'm trying to decide, it might sound like I'm adding a comment on two sides for the training director, and also to understand what the trainees might be, or students might be going through. So I'll start with the students might be going through briefly and then go through. Many of the trainees of color that I've been working with, and some of us have been working with, one thing for training directors and people to kind of understand is how it's kind of impacting them. While it might look on the outside as though they're fine, they're here, they've in a sense are in grad school or a postdoc, and in many cases they have sort of employment. Many of our trainees of color have family members that are at the front lines. They're the ones that we look at in terms of the disparity here. The ones that are at the front line employees, going to work every day, putting themselves and their families at risk, and they're very concerned about that. And so that's some of the stuff that's kind of going on maybe behind the scenes with that. Also, this concern or fear of unemployment is really kind of high, because they might, if they don't have employment, they're feeling a little bit of responsibility to take care of family members. So if some of the trainees have to relocate for a temporary amount of time, or they are trying to figure out how they're going to balance taking care of family, and that might not mean children, that might be a parent, a grandparent, brother or sister, and trying to think about their career going forward, what can we do? So I'm thinking about some things like we had mentioned about time, but also when it comes time to re-enter the workplace, is there being sensitive about they might need to have time to relocate or start coming back in at more of a, instead of full-on 40 hours a week, they might have to work up to it to be able to make the adjustments that they need, or getting telework to work a little differently. I don't know how that's going to work yet, but I'm always looking, like I said, at rays of light. When they're saying we might be reopening the country, it's not going to be just boom, we're open. It's going to be kind of gradual, and you might think of ways that you can understand and support. They might not tell you, but just know there might be some things going on that if they ask for something, it might be helpful to see if you can respond that way.
Yeah, so being as flexible as we can be.
Yeah.
As people return. And in fact, my intention was to turn towards the future at this point. So you set me up perfectly. So, some states and communities are starting to talk about returning to work. And several program leaders and PIs wrote that they felt a bit anxious about that themselves. As a uber extrovert, I thought I would be chomping at the bit to get back. And I do miss work, but there's something about the feeling of safety in not having to navigate the metro and not having to navigate crowded spaces. So I think many of us are realizing we're a little anxious ourselves, but lots of people have pointed out that they get a sense from trainees that they're even more anxious about returning. And so I wonder if you could give us some tips on talking about the anxiety of coming back, and the anxiety of being together all in a room, and the anxiety of somebody sneezing and not overreacting, and just giving us some, and maybe anxiety is not even the right word. Maybe I'm not even thinking about it right from a mental health perspective. But if you could give us some sense of how we might be preparing our students to come back, beyond the flexibilities, which I think we all hear. Some strategies for even talking about how this is going to happen. Go ahead, Annie.
Well, I think just as you described it, is normalizing it, that this is something that we're all going to go through, that this is a brand new experience going into this agreed upon isolation, and we don't know how it's going to play out, but we know it's going to be hard. And there may not be the supports that all over the internet, you know, every YouTube video, there may not be the supports that we're finding for staying home, that the universe may not provide as many supports for us transitioning back. And so being mindful that people may have more trouble getting, recognizing that what's going on, hearing the voices in the internet where they can say, oh yes, that's what I'm going through too. So providing that voice and those conversations when they may or may not be part of the general social conversation.
Thank you. Julia?
I think I agree with Annie, and to add to that, just notice how you're thinking about it and what the feeling is, and often the thought is feeding the feeling. So normalizing it and allowing it to be there, like something in me, instead of saying I am full-blown anxious, you can say something in me feels anxious about this, the unknown. And really giving yourself self-compassion. Like, this is hard. I'm really suffering right now. I'm scared to go back to work. And just turning towards yourself with this self-compassion is a really important U-turn, to come back to yourself, to give yourself that care and compassion we all need right now during this unknown time.
Just to go back to that comment in the beginning, and then Laurie will go next. I don't remember who it was who said, you know, scientists are so focused on thinking through problems that feelings don't come totally naturally to many of us. And I just wonder, I mean, I think beyond feelings being difficult, this idea that we should be kind to ourselves as opposed to pushing ourselves. It's like, it's not, oh, it's okay, I didn't finish the grant draft today. It's, oh my gosh, I didn't finish it, so now I'll stay up all night and, you know, I just have to get this done. And I wonder if any of you have, I mean, I know Kristen Neff is a big researcher in the area of self-compassion, but I wonder if there's a lot of work done on self-compassion within high knowledge environments, because it seems to me, I mean, I work in this now a lot and I spend a lot of time around all of you. So I've learned a lot, and I would say still, when people say the word self-compassion, I sort of go, ooh, right, that'll hurt my science. I just wonder if any of you have thoughts about how you might frame that in the biomedical research community, because it seems like the biggest stretch of all of them, quite frankly. Go ahead, Michael, and thanks.
Well, Kristen Neff actually does have a great article on our website about what self-compassion is not. Because when you first bring up self-compassion with trainees, the myths arise that, oh, if I'm compassionate with myself, it means I'm going to have a pity party, or it means I'm going to be complacent, or it means I'm going to be a narcissist, or non-productive, etc. And the research actually shows quite the opposite. So when you show them the data that actually practicing self-compassion makes you more accountable, more motivated, better able to work with other people, etc., it kind of counters some of that stuff.
An idea that if we see data, we might listen to you.
Right. So I use that a lot.
Laurie, you had something you wanted to add about the whole reentry and things.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking a lot with trainees about bits of control. So sometimes we think I'm either going to be at home all the time and I'm not going to go out, or I'm going to be all the way on the metro with everyone 100% of the time. So within the things that are scary, are there bits of control? Can we have our staff meetings and move our chairs apart? Are you comfortable wearing a mask on the metro? Will that help? So not necessarily saying, okay, this is totally out of my control, which then leads us to really feeling very anxious, but what bits of this can I control? And that's a nice way to sort of appeal to the problem solving part of it.
Yeah. Well, and to put that in scientific language, maybe we can have some micro control. You know, maybe we can't have macro control, but we can have some micro control. Anybody have anything else to add about supporting trainees and staff and ourselves in coming back? So then I want to cover just a couple of more things and move on. So usually in the summer, I mean, it's almost May. So usually by now, all of us are excitingly anticipating the arrival of lots of summer interns. And this year, many of us have canceled our summer internship programs for safety reasons, and we are all imagining offering these virtual programs where students will be able to log in from home and still participate in the summer program. And we were all gung-ho about this, and now we're all starting to say, wait a minute, are we overwhelming people? Is there such a thing as too much connection? Is it time to maybe say, spend the summer thinking about something else, not so much about science? Is there a middle ground? And I just wonder what your thoughts are about what we should be offering for students who normally would spend a summer doing intense research and now won't be able to. And whether you have any thoughts on that. Go ahead, Laurie. I thought nobody was raising their hand. I missed the one in the corner. Go ahead. Thank you.
I think that it's hard for us to know, right? Sort of what is too much, because we don't have any data on how much isolation versus that. We don't have that yet. We haven't been through a cycle of this yet. I wonder if curiosity can be a part of that as well, to be curious, to talk about sort of what's the experience been like thus far, and to see if there's some way to get a little bit of data when you're talking to students about sort of what's the experience of all of this online learning been like, and are there ways to tweak it so that you're still offering science and learning and growth with whatever little tiny set of data we have from the last couple of months.
Mm-hmm. That actually, go ahead, Saber, and then an idea is growing in my head, but let's
yeah, no, just to add to that, I think what's been helpful to look at these groups that have been online that we've been doing along the way have really, I think, set a foundation for people to be able to stay connected, to kind of to hear the latest of things that may be going on at NIH. So I think that it's helping as we move into reentry that people will have hopefully not felt so unsure about where things are, because we've kind of all together been learning this and figuring this out together in these type of ways, meetings and groups and different ways of connecting.
So the more we can talk about now, mm-hmm. and the future within the context of now, the more prepared we'll be, the more we'll have an idea of how much is needed over the summer. Is that what you're?
Yeah, no, that's what I think, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Amy.
I mean, I had two thoughts. I have one is that many of these people have been very, very, very structured, very full, very busy lives. They're high achievers. And so being thrown out into an unstructured summer when their lives, maybe when they were 6 is the last time they had that, I think could be a real recipe for a challenge, for lots of challenges and problems coming up. I think seizing summer as an opportunity is a little bit like what John was talking about before about developing transferable skills. What is it you would like to learn that you wouldn't have been able to learn? What, whether it's programming or how to cook, or it doesn't have to be career related, but offering a structure and being creative about what's available to people, and perhaps making it optional, but having it there, talking about it.
Laurie made that comment earlier about we don't actually have a lot of data, and I realized that we might be able to develop some training programs that reflect that. So if you were a mental health researcher and you wanted to learn about the impacts of a prolonged self-quarantine, what would the variables be? What would the experiment be? What questions might you ask in a focus group, right? And if we think about it, this at first we think, oh, it's the virologists and infectious disease people who are focused, but this will impact so many of our systems, right? And we're already seeing impact in the cardiovascular system and other systems from the disease, but we also are going to learn a lot about the impact of this quarantine on health and well-being. And so maybe we could actually build a few things that allow the students to be the scientists working on this, even if it's not, it's 10 weeks in the summer. I mean, we tell them all it's a short summer, but let's try to get something done. So maybe they can do some creative things in that regard. That might be a nice way of making it feel less pro forma. Oh, I didn't get to come, so they gave me some workshops, right? And then it becomes more of I'm engaged in some growing and learning around this. Anybody have anything else they want to add about that? Go ahead, John.
I think you all are saying it. What's on my mind is from a career counseling or from the career development, we're all doing career development, but I'm thinking about 10 weeks over a summer is an opportunity to learn. And if it's not like in person in lab, can we still learn about research or still learn about the science? And we had just talked about transferable skills. Some of the times we have these programs, but also it's opportunities for learning about careers in research, meeting with alumni, where you can maybe be able to put some of it together in almost like a virtual classroom kind of setting, and still having, and I like that what you're talking about now, Sharon, is an idea, create kind of a learning environment around what's happening in a pandemic and how is that relevant to this field. And those kind of things could be quite an important experience, and also from a very practical sense, keep the student engaged in keep that trainee or student or whoever's coming engaged in their professional and career development. And it's something they can still put on a very practical way on a CV, on a resume, and move their career forward.
Thank you.
So I think those kind of things is just kind of what I'm going to say.
All right, Annie, go ahead, and then I'll wrap up.
So one thing that has come up a couple of times, people are saying, I feel like the people who are working on COVID are part of something really great and important, and I'm not working on that. And so I'm missing out on that. And so how do, the suggestion of making part of the study so you can feel like you are part of the science of this time, and gives meaning and significance to our work in a way that can be very important for society, but is also important for the person's mental health.
For each individual. So I'm going to wrap up, but what I want to wrap up with is a question to each of you, and that is there something I should have asked about, or we should have asked about that we didn't ask about? Because the stakes are pretty high. Our healthcare workforce and our research workforce, the health of that workforce really depends on us making some good decisions, both now and as we move forward. I think we as stewards of this enterprise appreciate that if we get this wrong, we will lose some individuals and risk doing damage to an enterprise that's really important. And appreciating we can't get everything right, we still need to ask all the right questions now. So I wonder if there are things I should have brought up that I did not bring up. Michael.
This is I think for everyone on the planet, actually, not just the biomedical field, but we keep talking about going back to normal. What are the things we do not want to go back to? What are some of the ways of doing the training, doing the career development, doing the wellness that through this experience that perhaps we want to let go of and try something that's better, more innovative, and more humanly centered?
Thank you. Anything else, Julia?
I would just add to that our interconnectedness, that we're all affecting each other and we're all connected. And we forget that over and over and over again. I think about Langley Park, a community right down the street from me with over 20,000 people from Central America that are just struggling so much. And I feel that. And so how can we live out this realize that we are together in this?
I think like Annie talked about wanting to contribute to the science, perhaps we can also, as we move through this with our trainees, encourage them to remember that by being ambassadors of science and being good community citizens and volunteering and sharing their enthusiasm for science, that's another way that they are contributing in a big way, right? We need science right now more than ever, right? And so maybe building on that could be helpful. Anything else I should have asked, or should we all as a community should be thinking about from all of your perspectives? Go ahead, John.
Yes. Okay, yeah, I'm turned on. One of the things that is on trainees' minds and is are they actually able to apply for jobs right now? Apply for jobs, apply for graduate schools, or apply for next steps, even in terms of postdocs and things like that. And the answer is, because I think what happens when you watch TV or we talk in small communities is the fear is, or what you're hearing is nobody's hiring, or because of this pandemic, everything's on freeze. In reality, there are still many opportunities open. And actually, to work on, if you're originally on the market and thinking about applying for something, continue to apply. And what's happening is that many times if it would have been an in-person interview, they might be switching to virtual interviewing, and we're working on students about that. With that, they can even hire and even onboard people virtually to help, if you can help them see how you could start. So one of the questions, that would be something I would say is it's not and there might even be in with the science here in the process, we're kind of leading the effort here, but there might be new opportunities we haven't seen yet. But right now, you can still apply for things. It doesn't mean you have to freeze. That might be helpful to your trainees and something you can work with your career centers about and things.
I was sitting here saying, how did I miss that? But it seems as I was checking off questions, I just made one of my lines too long. So I went right through how do we talk about the job search in a very dramatically changed economy? Because you're right, people are saying there's nothing out there. And while we have already seen a contraction and some jobs some job searches put on hold, we also have gotten emails from people saying, I just signed a contract.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
I'm interviewing. And so how we balance acknowledging that this is a changed time and it will be for a while with, you still got to apply because nobody gets things they don't apply for, right? So thank you. I somehow missed that.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and wrap up. We went a little bit over, and I'm not sure how long the system will tape and actually transcribe for me. I want to thank all of you. I feel like I got a lot to think about myself, and I think that this will drive discussion among PIs and program leaders. And I hope that perhaps in a couple weeks we can meet again to go deeper maybe into a couple of the topics. So thank you all for taking some time today. For those of you watching, there are a set of resources and workshops around wellness and resilience for trainees, some leadership workshops that have been taped. There's also a workshop for PIs and program leaders on how to support trainees through this. And when this gets posted, we'll make sure to post those links as well. So everyone be healthy and stay safe. And thank you all very, very much.